Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I am Jess Joyner from Mountain Shop, and we're here to talk about climbing Mount St. Helens safely. We have Teresa Dalsager and Amy Graham from Portland Mountain Rescue joining us. Teresa and Amy will go in depth on the characteristics of Mount St. Helens. They'll explore the terrain, features, hazards, and safety that will equip you to safely enjoy this Cascade volcano. As we go along, Teresa and Amy will be monitoring the chat. So just type any questions you have in there and we'll get to them at some point in the presentation. And with that, I will turn things over to them. Welcome, Teresa and Amy.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Amy, do you want to start to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Amy Graham, like Jess mentioned. I've been with PMR for 4 years. I'm a support level rescuer with PMR. I'm also a board member and the treasurer as well.
And I'm Teresa, and I grew up in the Northwest, and I was lucky to be privileged to be raised in a mountaineering house. And I moved away and then moved back to the Northwest about 7 years ago, immediately joined the Mazamas to make friends who climbed since we were going to live here forever. And immediately found this incredible climbing community. And currently I'm in the leadership development program with the Mazamas, working to become a climb leader. And last summer, I applied and tried out for PMR and was accepted. And so I'm currently a deployable trainee with PMR. All right. Amy, I think you were going to do some housekeeping.
Yeah, I think like Jess mentioned, if you have questions, please type them into the chat. I think she already mentioned this before, but we'll try and get to them as we're talking, or if there are a lot of questions, we're really going to try and answer them all at the end. So please feel free to type in your questions. And we're going to try and make this as interactive as possible. So we will be asking you some questions as well. And so when we do, please type in those responses in the chat as well so that we can hear or see your responses. So thank you all for joining today. We're really excited to have 133 people right now listening to this presentation. So welcome and thank you for joining.
All right. Okay, so I'm just going to go over a little bit of history. I looked it up to make sure I pronounced these things right, but originally Mount St. Helens was known as the Luit or Luala Clough, which means smoking mountain. And then we're going to ask you guys right off the bat, if anybody knows, does anybody know the elevation prior to eruption? If you do, go ahead and throw it right there in the chat and Amy will check and see. The current elevation is 8,328. And there's, look at that. I see that.
Yeah.
Getting close. That's pretty close. You guys are close. Oh, no, sorry, not 12,000.
It was about 9,700. So yeah. The first person who responded was very close. I think 9,677 is what we found online. So nice work.
Yeah, and still up on the mountain, there was some sporadic steam venting and minor eruptions that lasted through 1991. I am going to say for the record, and because I'm proud of this, but when I was 8, I was lucky enough to stand on the summit when it was over 9,000 feet. And so that's one of the cool things that I get to say. And also, the day it erupted, my dad was on top of Mount Hood and took a bunch of photos with a bunch of other Mazamas of Mount St. Helens erupting. So that's our little family ditty. I just shared it. It's not really necessary, but I did anyway. Okay. Also, I have notes or we would go on for hours and hours and hours. Next.
Yeah, I don't have the experience of climbing Mount St. Helens before it erupted. So
yeah, but
Teresa
now it's
has
easy.
Me on that.
It's easier now. Let's just be honest. Okay. So I went up last Wednesday to check out the view. And this is from just at about 6,000 feet looking, while I was ascending, looking back into what was surely going to be an interesting descent later. Same day is on the left. I saw a total of 7 people, by the way, last Wednesday. These guys are walking back down into that cloud. We were on the Worm Flows winter route because it's winter. And I put in the picture from last year of this is 2 years ago, of a Monitor Ridge route climb on the 4th of July. And what I think is interesting is you can see the conditions while they're, one obvious thing is there's less snow, but still there's that ever hovering cloud below as you start going back down the mountain. So I wanted to just share that as a point of interest. And next on the top left, we have the coming out of, really getting closer here to Chocolate Falls. And that's about what the snow looks like as of last week, but it's starting to dump right now, so it'll be a little different. The top right is also the Worm Flows route. And that's just an example of what can happen when the wind scoured just landscape becomes crazy. If you can see a little bit closely onto your screen, those are people's footprints that where the wind has been so blown, so scoured that that's all that was left, was that sort of inverted boot print. On the bottom right is what the crater can look like in the summertime. And then on the bottom left, our friend Paige is a big skier, and she's up there towards the crater also.
All right. So the goal here today is to talk about climbing Mount St. Helens. I think that's why most all of you are here today. So we just wanted to give first a brief overview of what to expect in this presentation and what we're going to cover, like Jess already mentioned. First of all, I want to say that Mount St. Helens is a strenuous climb. It's not a walk-up climb. It's a strenuous climb, and it could take a long period of time. And we're going to go into that a little bit more in the upcoming slides, but I wanted to highlight that already. But it's also not technical, right? It's 20 to 35 degree slopes, but there are areas of steep scree and snow, and it does require backcountry skills when skiing. And there's considerations that you really should keep in mind while climbing Monitor Ridge or the Worm Flows route. And that includes avalanche safety, traveling in the snow, managing the weather, whether it's cold or whether it's hot, and the scree conditions as well. So we're going to talk about each one of these things and make sure we answer all of the questions that come up.
Okay, so for those of you guys that are new to mountaineering, and we also are aware that there will be many of you guys on this at this meeting tonight that have climbed Mount St. Helens, that have climbed lots of mountains. And by the way, we're going to ask you guys to feel free to jump into the chat as well and give your observations. That would be amazing. But for sure, one of the first things that Amy and I do when we're starting to talk about looking at a climb is before we even set the date, we look at the forecast and we look at the weather and say, what's going on out there? And so we just wanted to highlight a couple of resources. There are a lot of resources out there. And if you're at this meeting tonight and you have a great resource that we do not mention, please share that with, share that in the chat with everyone. That would be amazing. I really personally like mountainforecast.com and windy.com. Both of these particular sites allow you to go in pretty deep to what's going on at different elevations on the mountain. And one thing that's pretty important as a mountaineer is the wind and what's happening with the wind. And so if you just go to weather.com and it says, oh, it's going to be sunny with a side of mushrooms or whatever it is, that a side of meatballs, then that's not the place to go. The place to go is where you can really drill down and see what's happening at 3,000 feet. Oh, what's happening at 6,000 feet? And then what's going to be happening on the summit? Because the summit winds could be 45 to 60 degrees and it could miles per hour, yet the base could be 10 to 15. So the wind gusts can change dramatically as you're going up Mount St. Helens. So it's important to make sure that you're seeing that. And what's cool too about these two sites is you can expand out and look more sort of hourly by hour as the based on when your climb is. So these are important resources.
I think NOAA is also a good resource
Yep.
to look at too, when considering the day you want to climb. Also, someone else mentioned Mountain Forecast.
Yep, right there.
Yep.
So I will say, and I know that Amy will agree, we've both canceled climbs based on what we saw forecasting. And what's real is that everyone has a different tolerance level. For me personally, and also I'll say as a member of PMR, when I see that winds are forecasted to be at 25 miles an hour, that's my plan B. Carson Hot Springs looks good today. Maybe we'll do something else. You know, because it's not a lot of fun when you're getting knocked down when you're trying to climb. But all aspects of potential weather are important to look at, and again, at each and every elevation that you'll be at, because it's true, it's the most disappointing thing to get super ready for a climb, to put all the energy into it to get there, and then have to turn around because something that you could have found out beforehand was apparent. So the other thing I wanted to mention is the Mount Saint Helens Institute.org is also a great resource. They have everything. So it's www.mountsthelens.mshinstitute.org. They have current weather, they have photos, and everything you want to know about permits that we'll cover here too. But when we're done here tonight, that is a great resource to go to. And Amy, we'll go to the next slide.
Yeah, and I think someone mentioned in the chat avalanche forecasting, and so
there it is.
We led right into the next slide. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
we're talking about NWAC.
The mother of all websites for the Northwest here is the Northwest Avalanche Center. This resource is huge and highly recommended. I will say too, I am not the most tech savvy person. In fact, you don't see my hands running this even PowerPoint thing. And apparently I'm not even monitoring the chat right now. So this site is so user-friendly and so easy to navigate through. And I'm really gonna strongly recommend, we all do, to get familiar with NWAC and use that in conjunction with anything else you're using as you're planning a trip. They're going to let you know the current avalanche risk, and it'll help you decide what you're personally comfortable getting into. The other thing that's, I think, is important to mention here is that everyone has a different tolerance level over what they're willing to go into or not go into. For me, when I see it says the avalanche risk is considerable, it gives me huge pause to think, is that really how I want to spend my day or 2 days? Do I want to do that? So NWAC is the great place to go. We are not going to be diving into any sort of big avalanche awareness discussion tonight, but do note that the Mountain Shop is hosting an avalanche awareness virtual event, just like this, on March 15th at 6:30 p.m. And you can go on over to Mountain Shop now or afterwards or whatever and sign up. And I know that they will give you a huge tutorial about using their site, as well as some avalanche awareness information. All right.
And I see a couple questions in the chat regarding permits and what we do ahead of time when there is avalanche and weather that kind of sucks coming up. And so we can talk about that more when permits, but I think someone else mentioned in the chat too, that in the winter, you don't have to get a permit until you get to the trailhead. And there are a period of time that we'll show here in a few slides as to what those dates look like when you do need a permit and when you can do a self-issue permit at the trailhead itself. So thank you everyone for answering the questions in the chat as they come up as well. We appreciate the help while we are going through these slides. So thank you. All right, so next up, we're going to talk a little bit about gear. What we have listed here is gear for a summer fall climb of maybe Monitor Ridge. And then we also have a spring winter climb of Wormflow's route. So this is just a very high level packing list. Do not just bring these things. You'll probably need other things. But the 10 essentials are a big piece of what you would want to pack. And now what's included in the 10 essentials are also inclusive of a few items down below. But does anyone want to fill into the chat what is a part of the 10 essentials? We're gonna give that a few minutes. But while we get some feedback here.
Yes, first aid.
First aid for sure.
I'll be quiet.
No, you're fine. Definitely want to bring plenty of calories and water for either routes. Insulation layers, even in the summer, you want to have something warm because that wind at the summit can be pretty cold. Gaiters, summer, but also in the winter and spring, gaiters can be important too when you have snow going down into your boots. And so gaiters are something to always consider. Crampons in the winter and spring with an ice axe, always important. Remember to take those crampons off if you are glissading.
Oh yeah, we're going to talk about that later. 100%.
Exactly. Definitely you want sturdy boots. I think you want boots for both summer, fall, and winter, spring. Trekking poles or skis, either
Sure.
as well. And then don't forget your permits, your parking permits, and your climbing permits as well.
Yes, and somebody wants to bring a Sherpa and a mule. So
I fully
Very good.
support those things if they were allowed. Unfortunately, I don't believe we can bring mules on the mountain. Sherpas, if they're willing. All right, so let's move forward and talk a little bit more in detail on the 10 essentials. And so I know a lot of people had mentioned this, and I also saw something and I want to highlight, yes, if you're bringing an ice axe and crampons, you definitely want your helmet as well. So thank you for bringing that up. A helmet is very important if you have your ice axe out. Part of the 10 essentials, you want
I'm going to interrupt.
Yeah.
And I want Julia to know that we are going to talk about glissading.
Yes.
Safely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Navigation, that includes compass, an actual hard copy of your map. It also can include your Gaia on your cell phone, GPS. Remember to bring a battery pack or something to charge your cell phone if you are using that for your map and compass, but you always want to keep your map and compass with you as well, because things can die, things get cold and don't work. So keep that in mind.
And Amy,
yes,
this is a great time to talk about Alpine Savvy and the GPS tracks.
Yes, that is a great point. Alpine Savvy is a wonderful website by a great friend of ours who has a lot of really good information in there. And I think there's I don't know how many GPS tracks that you can find to be able to use in your devices. So please check out the Alpine Savvy website. We find it really helpful as well. Let's see, going back, headlamp, extra batteries, sun protection, sunscreen, chapstick, hat, food and water. Make sure you have that. Insulated layers, like I mentioned, whether you're climbing in the summer or in the spring or winter, you always want to make sure you have something warm to be able to put on when it gets windy or cold, or if something does happen and you're standing around on the mountain for a long period of time. It does get cold when not moving. First aid supplies, you want to be able to have a fire starter, emergency shelter, repair kit. These are all things to keep in your 10 essential kit. Anything else, Teresa, you want to add to this?
No.
Great. Yep, a whistle is also a great item to add. I think all of us have the 11th, 12th, 13th essential that we want to keep with us. And so I think some of these lists will change or have some some of these specific things that fit into one of these buckets. All right. I know there were some questions about climbing permits. So here we are. Between November 1st and March 31st, it's a free self-issue permit at the parking lot at Marble Mountain Snow Park. So if the weather's not great, you don't need to worry about getting a permit ahead of time. The thing you do need to worry about getting ahead of time is the parking permit, but you can get those literally the night before or the morning of to have your parking permit if you're getting a daily pass at the Washington State Snowmark permit site. And that's $25 for a daily pass. So if you're going to plan to go more than once, you might consider getting an annual pass as well. Between April 1st and May 14th, there's an online permit that costs $21. And there's a limit of 300 climbers per day. So those you do need to plan for in advance. And sometimes you're just out $21 if the weather doesn't look great and you're not able to go. So it's just something worth considering. Is it really worth going and climbing the mountain if potentially it's going to be life-threatening for that $21 experience? So keep that in mind. May 15th to October 31st, it's the same price for a permit, and the limit is a lot lower. So there's only 110 climbers that are allowed per day, and you're able to purchase those online.
And while Amy switches slides, I'm going to say that we see those questions, and we're going to really address those at the end, most of those, because some of them we'll be talking about. They'll be answered, the questions will be answered as we move through the PowerPoint. So when we get to the end, we'll scroll down and make sure that we've addressed everything. Okay.
Yep. And just so that everyone has it, those climbing permits that I mentioned are available online at recreation.gov. And how it works is that at March 1st, 7 a.m., those permits for the next month will be available. So March 1st, the permits for April will be available. April 1st, the permits for May will be available. So you just have to kind of plan a month in advance. And like I said, really keep in mind that, yes, you do have to plan, but really still look at the weather and make sure it's a smart decision to go before showing up and climbing the mountain, or be willing to turn around. I think that's also something worth mentioning too. It's not a problem to turn around after a mile in if that's what the mountain's telling you to do that day.
I will also add that if you have the flexibility to climb during the week, the opportunity for permits becomes exponentially greater. So, you know, you might look at a Tuesday, if you can take a Tuesday off or a Wednesday, and yeah, that can make a big difference. All right. So we want to talk about the routes. Warm flows is there are many routes on Mount St. Helens. We're only going to really talk about two tonight. Warm flows and Monitor Ridge. Down below Monitor Ridge, off to your right, worm flows. It's not warm, it's worm. Okay. So this is I really like this overview of the area. And I think Amy has her cursor. She's going to make a little circle down on the bottom, right down there, nice and slow down a little bit. There's Marble Mountain Snow Park, and that would be the destination parking area lot for the winter climb for the warm flows. And then just up here a little bit higher, on a little bit to the left, is the Climbers Bivouac, and that's the area that you'll start climbing if you're going in the spring or summer to fall on Monitor Ridge, the Monitor Ridge route. I wanted to also point out that the yellow area here on this map is where permits are required. Also, this is just a little extra. I don't know if you guys can see it if you guys are on laptop. If you're on your phone, you might not be able to see it, but there's a little trail that Amy's cursor is going around, number 216. That trail is the Lewitt Trail, and it's an amazing experience. It's about 30 miles to go around Mount St. Helens. You do have to have a permit. You can see you're going right through a permitted area. I did it in, I stayed 1 night or 2 nights. You could do it in 1 night. You can do it in 2 nights, 3 nights, whatever, you know, it takes for you, or whatever you want to make your plan for a backpacking trip. But we're not going to go into that tonight, but it's another really cool way to see the mountain. And so I probably shouldn't have mentioned it at all, but I want to. Anyway, carry on. Next slide. Yeah, and this is just a topo map that'll show a little bit more of here on the left. Well, she's on the right. On the right, we have the winter route starting down here at Marble Mountain. And this, by the way, the winter route is approximately 12 miles, just a little over 12 miles round trip. And then the Climbers Bivouac, the Monitor Ridge red route over here, the summer route, is approximately 10 miles round trip.
And I think you're getting ahead of yourself, but I believe that's on the next slide as well.
Sure is. Okay. Worm Flows, Marble Mountain Snow Park. So we'll say it. We can say it over and over, but it still won't change anything. Parking's limited. There's a lot. There's some overflow parking, and then there's a road to try and park on it. So be aware that on busy week, as we get closer towards the spring, Saturday, Sundays, and you say, oh, I'm going to get up at 2 in the morning, I'm going to drive out there to Mount St. Helens, and I'm going to park, the lots and all the overflow parking may be full. So just keep that in mind, and really be talking to your climbing party or people that you know, and make some decisions around that. For the Worm Flows, the climbing is winter through late spring, 12 miles approximately round trip, with an elevation gain of about 6,500 feet. The route winds through the forest. The first couple miles are right there through the snow park, into the lava flow gullies. You'll pass on top of Chocolate Falls and eventually to the snowfields. And by the way, this round trip of 6 to 12 hours is a really good gauge, because sometimes you'll talk to people and they'll say, I did it in 3 hours and we were home. And some people will say it took them 15 hours. I'm somewhere in the middle. Last week I was up and back in 9 hours, and I was happy with that. So, you know, it's not a race. You have to be aware of how much light there is in the day, especially when you're climbing in the winter. So that'll come up too on suggested times to start. But that's the overview of the Worm Flows.
One of the questions or statements, I guess, in the chat is talking about the cornice and how I'm a little close to the cornice here. What are your thoughts on that, Teresa?
So I actually took that photo. That is Amy on the up there, and where we were was, it was within our comfort level, and we both felt very safe. And I will say, the risk mitigator of our friendship here is her. It's Amy. I'm the one that'll go jumping off the side.
She's not jumping off the summit,
no.
But if what you don't see is the rest of this, I guess, rim of Mount St. Helens here, and we were pretty far away from what we thought would break if a cornice were to break here.
Yes.
So yes, there always is that risk, and we are going to talk about those risks and things to keep in mind when at the summit of Mount St. Helens. And I think that is one of them, is the cornice here, and trying to evaluate whether or not you are too close to the edge, or if you were within that safety.
And on that day, what we could see.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. All right, moving along to Monitor Ridge.
Monitor Ridge, starting at the Climbers Bivvy. This is primarily a summer and fall climb. That's me on 4th of July. 10 miles round trip, Más o menos, 4,500 foot elevation gain. So, you know, it's Mount Defiance in Oregon. There you go. Only a longer slog with bigger boulders. The route starts in the dusty, just a good forest trail, sends to boulder strewn ridge. And I'm going to put an emphasis and poke a pin in that boulder strewn ridge. Oh my God. There's a lot of boulders being gracefully covered in the snow right now. Then in the summer, not so much. So that's a good part of the conditioning of climbing that Monitor Ridge route, ash slopes, and eventually to the snowfields. Same, approximate round trip, 6 to 12 hours, especially if you're not in a race and you're just enjoying the day.
Yep, and I think now we have a couple more pictures we wanted to share in terms of the different routes now that we've talked about them a little bit. So let's see if we can pull those up.
Yep, on the top, Monitor Ridge, bottom Worm Flows, one in July, this one on the bottom left February 2022, and our friends skiing. Same, more pictures. The top is one of the seismic stations that you'll see, seismic stations that you'll see when you're climbing the Monitor Ridge route. They are a little farther away when you're on the Worm Flows route.
Anything else you want to add here? Okay. So let's see, moving on. All right. This is another picture of worm flows. I think we just saw that in the last slide. And you can see more climbers up ahead here, but we really wanted to give a little more detail about what the climb looks like and kind of more specifically about your start times and what more details are included. What were you saying, Teresa?
No. Nothing.
Okay, I thought you had something to add. All right, so when starting the climb, especially since it could take anywhere between 6 to 12 hours, depending on your capabilities, the weather, the time of year specifically, you want to make sure you have light. An alpine start is good to consider sometime between 4 and 5. Plus, it also helps with the parking situation to be able to allow yourself time to park before those parking lots fill up. Below tree line, like it says here, it's relatively easy. You don't really start gaining a lot of elevation until you get above tree line. The nice part about Mount Saint Helens is there are directional poles on the Monitor Ridge and the Worm Flows route that you can see once you're above tree line. Otherwise, it does get confusing, and especially in poor weather conditions where visibility is really poor, these poles can be really helpful. But I do have to say, using your map, compass, GPS is also going to be really important in case poor weather does come in and you're not able to really see the route you ascended. Like this says here, steeper sections for the last 1,000 feet. That's on either route. You're going to have a really ashy, loose surface on Monitor Ridge that does get pretty steep within the last 1,000 feet. On the Worm Flows route, you're going to have steeper snow. This is where you will probably want to bring out your ice axe and have your helmet. Depending on the snow conditions, you might want crampons on as well. So keep this in mind. It's going to be relatively easy. Then there's going to be a period where it does get a little steeper, and then that last 1,000 feet, it is going to get even steeper. Anything you want to add, Teresa?
Yeah, I will. And year to year, year by year, month by month, day by day, the conditions change.
Yep.
And so I've been on Mount Saint Helens when returning to descend from the summit and thought, oh, I think I'm going to need to down climb. It's very steep today. And last week, I barely pulled out my ice axe. So, one of the things that really becomes important is that you are prepared, but then also know that if for any of your friends that tell you, or if you hear anybody say, this is just a walk up, we might have said this in the right when we started tonight, but I'm gonna put a pin in this too. This is not a walk-up mountain. It's a long climb, and there are definitely sections of it. And as you get past 6,000 feet, you know, it does start to become steep and icy. And this year with the winds and just the way it's been and not enough snow, I know it's snowing right now, but it makes for a very icy, you know, more dangerous descent, frankly.
Yep. And I think one of the things you wouldn't necessarily see when there's a lot of snow are those poles on the worm flows route. However, on really low snow years, like we've seen in the last year or two, those things are visible. So it just depends on the conditions and the amount of snow that you have and what you're able to do. And I think someone's asking about skiing the route. Yes, we have a lot of friends who do skin up and ski down. But that all depends on the snow conditions too. So yes, provided there is snow coverage, you are able to skin up and ski down during the winter, early spring. But again, that's all depending on the year and those conditions. All right, so here's a great picture. And I think the question is here, are they going up or are they coming down? And the reason I ask that question is because a lot of times on Mount Saint Helens, or any of the volcanoes in the Cascades for that matter, there can be times where up and down can look the same. So type in the chat, let me know what you think. I know there's some clues that give away what they really are doing. And yes, everyone is catching on that, yes, they are all going up. But this could easily be people going down too if they didn't have their boots in uphill ski mode. But I just thought that was interesting because yes, the weather, the cloud cover, the visibility can all change how the mountain looks, how the route looks, and it's hard to tell up from down sometimes. There's a question about bringing snowshoes in the winter. Again, I'm going to say it just depends on the snow conditions. And I think something to add too is to read trip reports. You're able to see what other climbers were doing like a day before, 2 days before. You're able to kind of see, did they need snowshoes? Was it really icy? But keep in mind that's as of that day. So you really want to watch the weather, understand if there was snowfall recently. Snowshoes can and have been helpful in the past on Mount Saint Helens. But once again, it really depends on the conditions.
And since you just answered a question, I think it's fair that we answer Julia's question, which was, given I have an AIRI training, but I've never climbed Mount Saint Helens, I'm trying to figure out if it's easier to climb with snow covering the boulders or the shorter route with the boulder field. Well, if you're asking me, I've had 5 knee surgeries, which is fine. I'm not a complainer, but I'm telling you, the last time I climbed that Monitor Ridge, I was like, I'll never do that. I don't need to do that again. I've done it enough.
So
I tend to go towards the worm. Yeah. I tend to go towards the snow. Easier
I love the snow.
Is relative.
Yes, I love the snow, but there's a special part of me that really does enjoy Monitor Ridge. And so I do like going up the boulder field. That was the first way I've climbed Mount St. Helens. I've climbed it many times both ways.
It's just sentimental for you.
It is. It's sentimental. But there's pros and cons to each.
Yeah. Snow is going to be easier.
I agree. It also has other risks associated with it.
Yes.
Too. I think there's
Jeff thinks so too. Oh, the heat's obnoxious in the summer. We'll get to that. Yeah. We'll come back to that.
There can be very hot days in the snow as well. I'm just going to
be in your bikini. Yes. No.
Don't do that.
Please don't do
Too much sunscreen. All right, we're going to move on now.
Okay.
All right, now we're moving into some typical climbing hazards.
Okay.
Are you taking this, Teresa?
Nope.
Okay. So some hazards that you and anyone who's up on the mountain can find is it can get really cold. We've talked a lot about wind. We've talked a lot about having enough insulated layers, but hypothermia is something that is a possibility up there. Avalanches are something else we talked about, looking at the NWAC site and understanding what the snow conditions are. Another thing to keep in mind are snow bridges. And when there's not enough snow, there can be these hidden bridges and moats and holes that you can fall in through. And so post-holing is something that really is a hazard as you're hiking back down after a long day and it starts to warm up the snow, the sun starts to warm up the snow. You can punch through and potentially twist an ankle or get stuck. All of these things you want to keep in mind. Rockfall is another hazard, especially on Monitor Ridge when you're hiking up or down. Rocks can fall off these ridges and you could be right underneath loose rock that tumbles down on top of you. I think Teresa just talked about climbing in her bikini. Sunburn is something that you're really going to have to be careful about with this situation. So I said, need a lot of sunscreen to prevent that, but sunscreen is part of those 10 essentials. Make sure you're always applying. It can get you even if it's a cold, overcast day. Up on the top, that last 1,000 feet on the Monitor Ridge route especially, there's a lot of ash and loose rock and small tiny pieces of abrasive material that can fly in your face, that can, when the wind picks up, be pelting you in the face and the arms, wherever you have bare skin. So make sure you have plenty of layers to be able to cover up when that happens too. I think I'm reading the chat here and it looks like, yes, windblown ash is harsh on the skin. I've experienced this firsthand. All right, we've talked about this a little bit, but the rim hazards are something you really want to keep in mind when you get to the top. You want to make sure you give yourself enough space at the edge because the cornices can collapse. So you want to keep in mind what you're standing on and how close to the edge you really want to get, because what you're standing on might not actually be dirt and rock below you. It could be air. So you want to stay back from the edge. We're saying here for safety purposes, you want to stay back at least 100 feet. But this all comes down to your safety awareness and how comfortable you feel when you get up to the top. Teresa, do you have anything to add?
Well, this is a wider view of that earlier photo.
Yep.
From the same day last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were a little farther back than it may have even appeared. But I felt very comfortable because as you can see, even if you look over to the right, you can see, well, and that's true, Jeff. I mean, there's no,
Yep.
Yeah.
If the cornice breaks and you aren't, and you're standing on it,
Game over.
Game over.
But we felt comfortable that we were far enough back based on what we could see.
Yep. And like we say here on this slide, it's difficult to judge from above.
And yes,
So
it'll be it's being recorded, and we will ask Jess to send it out to everyone.
Yep. All right.
And that's true, Anita. You could take other people with you.
Definitely. All right. And I know we had some questions about glissading and descent hazards specifically. So glissading is a really nice way when there's great snow to come down the worm flows route. I would not recommend glissading on the Monitor Ridge route because it's all rock and not great conditions. So the time we're going to talk about glissading is coming down worm flows when there is good snow. You want to make sure you take your crampons off. You want nothing on your boots when you're coming down glissading. So if you have micro spikes, you have anything on your boots, make sure those come off before you glissade. There's a lot of good glissading videos. I believe I might be speaking out of turn, but PMR might even have some, or maybe The Mazamas have some YouTube videos out there on how to glissade and the proper way to use your ice axe. We're not going to go into that today, but please make sure to watch some videos on how to safely glissade so that you're not hurting yourself or others when coming down that way. Speed control can be challenging. I think this is something someone mentioned in the chat, is that they didn't have an ice axe and they slipped and got out of control pretty quickly. Even with an ice axe, sometimes it's hard to control your speed when glissading. So if it's too icy, it might not be the right time to glissade. It might be best to walk down the mountain with your crampons on because it's too icy.
I also think too that it's okay to not glissade if all your friends are, and just say, I'm gonna walk.
I've done that before.
I've done that, and then I've surprisingly had other people in my group say, oh, thank God, I'm walking. I didn't want to get in that.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to assess in the moment, like, do I feel comfortable? Does this look like this is beyond my experience level? So we say here, speed control can be challenging. Speed control is challenging, not can be. You start going, maybe I'm glissading wrong, but the wedge was never worth it. Okay, see, I need to stay out of the chat.
Yep.
You start going fast, especially if you're on any kind of steep slope. So if you're watching other people and you don't like what you see, they seem like they're out of control, it's all right to walk down. There's no shame in that. And if your friends are your friends, they will say, good on you, you do you.
And I think I see something in the chat here as well. And I don't have statistics on it, so I can't give you actual numbers, but I think a lot of injuries, maybe the majority of the injuries, do come from glissading. And I think that's, and the descent. So I think that's something to keep in mind, that it's a really dangerous part of the climb is coming down, because not only are you more tired because you've already climbed all the way to the top, but now that you're coming down and it's icy, perhaps things can potentially go wrong.
Yeah, and also I guess I'll ask you guys to say in the chat, why is it so important to take off your crampons? What could possibly go wrong?
That's a great question. We don't have any answers though yet.
We will.
I know. Lacerations.
Yeah,
Snap
stab
an ankle,
yourself.
snap a knee,
Oh.
break your leg.
So if we could see everyone, or if we had everyone raise their hands, I am sure there are many of us in this meeting tonight that have seen some terrifying glissading practices. I saw a guy recently holding his ice axe upside down and with crampons on. And he was like, I was too far away to go, oh, stop.
Yeah. And it's not funny. I think we're seeing that in the chat. All of these things are dangerous.
Yep.
And not something you want to witness, not something you want to be a part of.
And don't get lazy and just say, I'm just going to go on this little tiny chute. I'm just going to leave them on because I don't want to take them off, because that'll be the time that.
I also want to throw out there that this also applies to other mountains, like Mount Adams, for example, not just Mount Saint Helens. I know there's a lot of fun glissading to be had on Mount Adams, but keep this in mind that this is not just for Mount Saint Helens, that this is a very dangerous piece on any volcano that you're climbing.
Yeah, and the rock obstacles, that's a real deal too.
Yep, for sure. Even in the winter, there's still uncovered rocks. There's rocks that are barely sticking out of the snow, and you don't want to run into those as well.
We will just put an emphasis on just start Googling safely glissading, and you'll get a plethora of good techniques if you haven't had a class or signed up for or taken a mountaineering beginning class.
Yep.
Okay.
Another hazard that we've also talked about is route finding, right? We've mentioned this quite a few times because it's a very important piece. Ridges look similar from below, and below. Something that I always try and do when I'm on a climb is to turn around as I'm heading up the mountain, just to look at what that terrain looks like when you do turn around. Because a lot of the times you're so focused on getting up to the summit, getting up to the ridge, that you don't actually take a moment and turn around to see what it looks like behind you. Finding or keeping a GPS track, I think that's a really good way to keep on track and to keep on track on the way back down as well. So you can follow that same exact route. Gaia is a great tool to be able to do that. Someone asked if we carry wands. I haven't carried wands on Mount St. Helens. I think that's something you could do. But if I'm carrying wands, that probably would mean that the weather's not great.
What is a wand?
Oh, a wand is something you would put in the snow to
a little flag, little marker.
Like a flag or marker, like Teresa said, that would help you find your way back down again. But if I'm using wands, I'm typically trying to pinpoint where crevasses are. And I've used them more on mountains like Baker and Rainier, for example.
Gaia is our preferred route keeper for having a preloaded GPX track already loaded into Gaia is really helpful.
Gaia is amazing.
And that's what, so I'm going to go back to alpinesavvy.com. Huge resource, again, super user friendly. You can go into right into his site and easily find all the tracks. You can upload them and have the tracks so you can follow how to get back. Because you can see on this picture on the bottom, that's how I descended Mount St. Helens last Wednesday. And I will tell you, and you can see Mount Hood is back there in the distance. So when I walked down into that cloud, literally I could see to just beyond my feet. And it would have been very easy to follow somebody else's tracks.
Yep, like it says here, footprints can descend different routes. You could go down the wrong way. And I know we've talked about that on different mountains too, that you don't want to start descending the natural way that the mountain will lead you sometimes, because it ends up cliffing out potentially. But following your footprints, not footprints, but footprints in Gaia. So using these breadcrumbs within a GPS.
Do you want to explain what that is? Someone has a question about that.
Oh, what are GPS breadcrumbs? Waypoints. So within your GPS, you're able to mark a location that you're at in that moment. And so then maybe you take 50 steps and you do it again. So it's just a good way to mark spots along your path, along your route, so that you're able to follow it on the way back down.
And also, so last week when I was coming up in this cloud, I didn't have to set waypoints because I already had the route all the way to the summit, and I knew I was going to follow that exactly back all the way back down.
Yep.
But I do want to share that I saw a Facebook post just the other day from the Gifford Pinchot National Forest / US Forest Service page on Facebook. So this is from 5 days ago, stating that almost every weekend over the last month, at least one climber or group of climbers have made a 911 call and requested search and rescue assistance in route finding mishaps on Mount St. Helens. So it's happening, and part of the conversation in that post was it's happening more frequently, more and more. So even though I did say originally and that it's crowded on the weekends, I'm not following somebody else up the mountain or down the mountain. I know where I'm going to go. Where's my car parked? They might be skiers that are parked in some other place, and they're going to go skiing off somewhere else. I can't follow them. So just being prepared with your GPS. And I know some of you guys are writing in the chat, I have it, but I don't know how to use it. Okay, I'm like 1,000 years old, and I am just getting comfortable with the technology and literally being able to say, okay, I know where I am, and comfortable, really, really comfortable with my compass. And really, so it's never too late. to just sit down and take the time that it takes to watch. Going back to Alpine Savvy, they have navigation classes galore.
And there's
on
YouTube videos.
how to use everything in YouTube videos. But I
Yep.
do know from the trusted source that it's going to teach you the right things for mountain
Yep.
climbing, etc. Anyway, yeah, we can't overstate this.
Yep. This is one of the biggest hazards, is route finding. So definitely get a app, GPS app, know how to read a map, use a compass. All of these tools would be very useful to get you back down.
And my answer to the All Trails question just now, I have All Trails 2 on my phone. Gosh, I found it to be inconsistent, but I have it. And usually I have Gaia going. I also have 2 external battery chargers now that I carry just to be safe, because I always want my phone.
And I also carry the Garmin Inreach Mini, which we
and I have the Inreach also.
Which we will talk about here shortly in terms of
but All Trails is okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Just make sure that the route that you downloaded, the route that you want to follow. Not, make sure that you're going to the front page or whatever the page is of Mount St. Helens for the climb, and not somebody else's track.
Yeah, I think someone else said All Trails can be inconsistent as well.
Yeah.
I think we've both found inconsistencies with All Trails, and we really like using Gaia. So no, we're not sponsored by Gaia. We just really like using Gaia. So.
I'm not sponsored by Inreach either, because I have a mini one, and I couldn't, if I downloaded maps in there, I wouldn't be able to see them people.
No.
So I have my Inreach there's an app that's connected to my phone for my Inreach, and I use the phone that's connected to my Garmin, and then the Inreach is there for the SO. It's there, right there on my shoulder. Okay.
Yep. And I think that's
Amy's moving us along.
Yes, that's what we're going to
Okay.
talk about when we talk about when things do go wrong. Some of the tools you can use, like the Garmin Inreach Mini, to be able to call for help. So, Teresa.
Okay, and yes, I'll say it again because someone just asked again. Yes, this session is being recorded and it will be made available, unless Jess from Mountain Shop tells us something different, but I don't think she's going to.
It's available.
Okay,
Yes.
So we've had all this conversation. You got, it will be yes. Anyway, you're prepared. You're with your friends. You're with one friend, whatever. You're out there. So what could possibly go wrong? I love that. So we want to just spend a couple minutes letting you tell us all the things that you think that could go wrong on your climb.
Just reading through someone's message here about their Gaia not working correctly. So inconsistency.
That's a bad thing.
That happens. Injuries.
An injury, dehydration.
Yep.
Getting lost.
Bad weather.
Hypothermia.
Hypothermia. Losing your GPS device. Definitely. Slipping on the gravel. Not enough water, food.
Dehydration.
Yeah.
Right. Cramps.
I think
these are great.
Great things.
Altitude sickness. Oh yeah, snow blindness. Okay. So we're going to switch gears. My friend has been there several times. Okay. Fall. So someone asked earlier, it was something about a snow moat or a bridge, a covered snow bridge. Amy, do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, so it's a moat or a snow bridge that's covered in snow. So you have enough snow to where it's a hard thing to explain. There's a path that's now covered in snow, and there's probably like a moat, meaning a hole on either side of that bridge, and it's all covered in snow. And so when the snow starts to melt, or when there's less snow on the ground, then there's a smaller layer of snow, and you could easily punch through and fall into that hole if you're not exactly on that bridge. Did I explain that for you, Teresa?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another thing that can happen.
Yeah.
And last Wednesday, just getting up a few hundred feet before the summit. And I did notice that there was a little bit of a sunken section to the snow that came kind of in a 4-foot straight line for about 20 feet. Anyway, I stepped on by and punched right through and saw there was air and blue below me, and just threw myself out before anything bad happened.
And
But
this
I
is
will
on Mount
say,
St. Helens.
this
I'm
is
just
on
gonna-
Mount Saint Helens. And I'm going to tell you this right now. All I could think about when I was standing up, looking at and taking a picture of it, if you're friends with me on this and you're at this meeting, then you saw the picture already on Facebook. All I could think about was, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm not going to be on the news tonight. So yeah, hazards are real. There's real hazards. And so when something goes wrong and you're there, one of the first things we're going to shift gears and be super serious for the next few minutes. You know, your friend is glissading or you're glissading. Gravity always wins. That's right. Unless you're blink of an eye guy. You're glissading, your friend is glissading, somebody gets out of control, and they're not sure if their ankle's broken or maybe their leg is broken, but something's gone wrong, or maybe they've dislocated a shoulder or something's happened. And so the first thing that you're going to do is everyone's going to stop for a moment and look at what's happened. And one of the things about Mount Saint Helens, I will say, on a weekend, on a warm, busy or cold, busy weekend, there will be many people probably. On warm flows during the week or Monitor Ridge during the week, there will not be as many people around. But you have to assess pretty quickly, like what's next to this injury. And it may be hypothermia. You may walk up to someone who is hypothermic, who can't walk very well, or their level of consciousness is something's wrong, and you can tell that something's wrong. So first you'll decide what kind of emergency this is. So you'll ask the questions. Will everyone here, everything with whatever's happened, can everyone survive here without a rescue? Does that look like that's possible? Can you prevent the situation from evolving into a life-threatening injury? Is that possible? And can the group or can your group self-evacuate? And if the answer is no, seeking emergency assistance becomes a priority. And the first thing you're going to do is call 911. That's the very first thing you're going to do. So we just talked about this a little bit, but you know, it's going to be your cell phone, your personal locator beacons, your Inreach, your Spot, your satellite phone. Send for help. Call 911. And if you're in an emergency, the cell service is amazing right now, by the way. So,
but you can't always rely on that.
But you can't rely on it.
Yes.
But I found the last 3 times I've climbed it, the cell service has been very consistent. Now, I hope other people pitch in, but yes, I'm really going to rely on my Inreach to be clear. If there's an emergency, I'm going to push that red button, the red SOS button.
Yep. And if all things fail, like you don't have an Inreach Mini, you don't have your cell phone that's working, and someone needs to go for help, which means they go to where there is cell phone signal, or there is a way to be able to call 911. But the first thing you really want to make sure is you're in contact with the emergency services, because 911 is what's going to connect you to, let's see if I can move these slides, the rescuers. So Mount St. Helens rescuers, they fall under the Skamania County Sheriff's Department. So PMR, we fall under Clackamas County Sheriff's Department, and the Mount St. Helens rescuers fall under the Skamania County Sheriff's Department. So everyone falls under, everyone meaning search and rescue volunteers, they fall under a sheriff's department. And that's why calling 911 first and foremost is the first step, because then they connect you, you who needs help with the rescue organization. The volcano rescue team on Mount St. Helens, like we say here, provides skilled volunteer search and rescue services under the sheriff. So that's what we do on Mount Hood. We also provide secondary resources on Mount St. Helens as well, if they need additional search and rescue personnel. I think you've also seen stories or news articles about helicopter support that's happened on Mount St. Helens. There are helicopters potentially available. It just depends on if they have staff at that time. And it's provided by different areas. So they come from Astoria, Whidbey Island, or even Yakima. However, it all depends on the conditions. Say it's a whiteout condition, say it's really windy, night, these sorts of situations are going to make it very difficult to get a helicopter. And I believe, I don't know how much Mount St. Helens helicopters charge for a rescue, but I do believe that if you are picked up by a helicopter, it is going to cost money.
Yes.
One other thing we really wanted to talk about is a rescue timeline, because it's not so much that you call 911 and a helicopter arrives in 30 minutes and you're off the mountain. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work like that. I know we've talked in previous lectures and Zoom informational sessions on Mount Hood that it can take up to 8 hours to get rescued on Mount Hood. A similar thing is Mount St. Helens. Things to consider when waiting rescue, or that can slow down the rescue timeline, is whether or not there's available rescuers. We are all volunteers, and typically most units are volunteer based. And so it just depends on how many rescuers can get off work. Is it the middle of the night? How long does it take through traffic to get cars up to Marble Mount or the Climbers Biovac? What's the weather like? What's the road conditions? What are some of the other hazards that we're going to, as rescuers, have to get through in order to get to you, wherever you may be on the mountain? So these are all things to keep in mind when there has been a situation, knowing that you might have to stay put, you have to hunker down, you have to try and stay warm while you await for a rescuer to come. Anything else you want to add, Teresa, to this?
Yeah, I would say that just as we're talking about this, it's also part of what you talk about with your friends that you're climbing with, or your, you know, as you make, or you're with yourself, maybe, that as you make decisions throughout the day. So maybe you're going slower than you thought you would be, and you know it's going to get dark at, right now it's 6 o'clock. And you think, well, I could be to the summit by 6. Well, then you're only halfway on the mountain.
Yep.
Or you think you're going to get to the top by 4, and you still have to come back down. And are you comfortable in the dark? Are you going to be comfortable in the dark? Do you have a headlamp? Do you have a trusted GPS system that works, that you can check? You know, and this is even outside of the rescue scenario, but you're making decisions. I think that's why we lead into this before we get to this rescue component of, if you're prepared and you're really making good decisions, then that helps mitigate some of that, but not all the time. And sometimes the most prepared group, you know, someone can slip and on an ice cube on a big freaking mountain, and down you go. So, you know, the best laid plans. So this is why we're, you know, as we move into this, like, now, what are you really going to do here? And this, I think this is probably the most important slide that we have tonight.
Yep.
If something's gone sideways and you're going to be waiting for 6 hours possibly.
Exactly. So if you've already called 911, you've talked to the rescue group, and they're on their way. Now what do? You're on the mountain, it's probably cold. First thing you need to do is have a plan to keep everyone safe and try and mitigate someone else getting injured or someone else getting hypothermic. You want to make sure everyone's eating, drinking, and that you've been able to create some sort of shelter while you're waiting it out.
And make sure you are feeding the person who's injured. I just got off another class course I'm taking. And anyway, one of the things the instructor just told us about hypothermia, which is just so good at the top of my mind. Water, even hot water, coffee, tea is not going to help a hypothermic person. Calories, they need calories. So get food from wherever you can, from all your people around you, and make sure that that injured person is eating.
Yep. And that everyone else is eating too, so
Everyone
that you
else,
also
yeah.
don't become hypothermic as well, because you want to make sure that you're all able to support and take care of each other. You want to continue to assess the situation. You want to keep the resource or the rescue team informed of what's happening. If something changes about the status of the patient, you want to let us know and make sure that you're communicating the information that you have if something changes, and making sure that the communication lines are still clear. So that means you also stay put. You don't move unless you have to. And if you do, you want to make sure you alert the sheriff and that person you're in communication with, so that there's no confusion about where you're at on the mountain, because you've probably relayed a lat long, latitude and longitude, or a location of where you're at on the mountain, and that's where those rescuers are going to go. So you don't want to move and then the rescuers arrive and they don't find you. So you want to make sure that there is communication open, that you listen and follow the instructions that the sheriff gives you on the phone. If they say to turn your cell phone off and call back in 10 minutes, you want to make sure you are doing that, because that would protect your battery, making sure that you do have a way to communicate, because sometimes we found people have lost their battery power because their battery dies in the cold. But making sure you're having a way to either charge your battery if you have an extra battery pack or something to be able to keep your phone charged, and that maybe you're turning off all other cell phones to be able to have other ways of communicating if one cell phone does die. You also want to make sure you're ready to depart quickly. When rescuers arrive, they're going to quickly get to work to make sure that they can get the injured person off the mountain as fast as possible. So you don't want to have all of your stuff strewn everywhere if you can help it, and make sure you're ready to go once they are arriving. When rescuers arrive, I think this is also really important to touch on. Let the rescuers take the lead. We've been trying to assess the situation and really get to work, and to be able to do what we need to get someone out to safety. We will ask for help if we need you to help out in any way. Mostly we will want to know what happened and what the status is currently of the patient, and what's been happening for the last however long period of time. And we might ask for things like, can you help carry this thing out? Or can you help hold something? I think those are the things that we will be asking for help with, but most of the time it's best just to sit back and let us take care of the patient and make sure that that person is able to get to safety and to medical help as soon as possible. And I think we've wrapped up all of our slides for today. We're going to touch back on some of the questions, but just wanted to leave you with some information on Portland Mountain Rescue as well. I have mentioned that we are 100% volunteer based, and we operate under Clackamas County Sheriff's Department, and we don't charge at all for rescues. We operate fully on donations by the community. So thank you again for participating with us today. We're just going to spend a couple minutes now going through some of these questions. So if you haven't wrote in a question or haven't had your question answered yet, please feel free to type that in now. And we're really going to try and make sure we answer everyone's questions, since we do have some extra time.
And we wish we could see you guys and wave at you, but
I know
we know you're there. for sure. Okay.
All right, so
Anything new?
no, unfortunately, Mountain Shop does not rent GPS beacons or transceivers. Wait, Mountain Shop rents transceivers, beacons for avalanche purposes, but not the GPS devices. So I'm clarifying these things from Jess. One of the questions is, are ropes ever used? I think one of the things I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation was that it's a non-technical climb. I've never seen ropes being used. I wouldn't use ropes on Mount St. Helens. So the answer is no. Question is the Mazamas. So the Mazamas is a climbing organization in Portland. And they offer classes on mountaineering. I know there's a beginning climbing class, as well as intermediate and advanced classes as well. They would teach you skills such as how to use ice axe, crampon use, basically all the basics like Teresa mentioned. So it's something to check out if you want more information on some of these skills. Can you camp anywhere on St. Helens, or are there designated areas? I know there are permitted areas for camping. I know in the summer there are camping areas like at June Lake, but most of these are permitted spots. And I think the best place to go for more information on camping, because I don't have all the information on where to camp, is to go to the Mount St. Helens Institute or the Northwest Forest site. Does someone have that information? What is that? If someone has the site that I'm talking about for the Northwest Forest Service, they would have a lot of good information about camping.
It's the Gifford Pinchot National Forest.
Thank
I
you.
don't know what the, yeah. But also the Mount St. Helens Institute.org.
Yep.
They will have all of that. And someone else wrote a question about, we mentioned camping on the 30 miles. That's not up the mountain, that's around the mountain. And there is camping, there's dispersed camping along that trail, but you still need a permit.
And there's also sections that you're not allowed to camp.
Yes.
On that trail.
And you would
as well.
find that out as you did your research.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I believe this is going to be available. PMR will have it on as a YouTube video, as well as I believe the Mountain Shop will be sending this out. Just please correct me if I'm wrong about Mountain Shop sending this out. I'm not 100% certain about this, but I do know that PMR will have this available.
Yes, the answer is yes.
A YouTube video.
She just said yes. How do you decide if a bivy bag is worth carrying? I don't know. I have one and it's always worth carrying. Mostly for someone else, if someone else needs it. That's why I carry it. But I might need it too. So
it's always good to have an emergency shelter,
yeah.
right? And a bivy bag is a good source of warmth. If it is getting cold, you can put that around you. You can crawl into it if you need to get out of the elements. It's just a good emergency piece to keep in your bag.
Where would you recommend a newbie hook up with experienced groups to do the climb, Mazamas? I don't have any mountaineering friends. So there are Facebook pages. So I could go down this road, Amy. Facebook pages like Pacific Northwest Mountaineers. I see people reaching out. I see people reaching out in the Oregon hikers and climbers.
Hikers and climbers, I believe.
Hikers and climbers.
The Mazamas are also
Julie.
A great place.
Her name is Julie. There's a Pacific Northwest women's climbing page that you might want to check out.
The Mount St. Helens Institute also has guided climbs of Mount St. Helens as well, I believe. So that's also worth checking out if you wanted to go up with someone who knows the mountain and leads these climbs every day. And
also you had 133 Mount St. Helens friends earlier on this, just at this meeting.
Yeah.
So
REI, I think, does hikes
They
and
do.
climbs of
They
Mount St.
do.
Helens as well.
Meetup groups. Yep. The Institute has guided climbs. Yep. Thanks, you guys, for helping us answer these, because that's really helpful. Do you have any recommendations on how to train for the climb? So my philosophy is to just start moving. So move. And I mean, get out there and go hiking. And if you can't go hiking out in the gorge or someplace, just start walking around your neighborhood. If you belong to a gym, get to the gym and start training in there. But honestly, you can do the 5 miles or the 6 miles or the 12 miles round trip, the 10 miles round trip. If you are in relatively, good physical condition and you are able to go on if you can climb Dog Mountain, for example, for sure, you're going to be just fine on Mount St. Helens, except unless you discover that at 6,000 feet, you get altitude sickness. And then that's not the same. And then that's different. So I just think that training really is about moving. So if you say, hey, I'm going to climb Mount St. Helens in a month, then you're going to set some goals to be hiking or start tracking some miles. What would you say, Amy?
I think the most important thing is getting up elevation as much as possible. So
if
like you said,
if that's possible.
Moving. Yeah, so Dog Mountain, Mount Defiance, some of these hikes are really
King
good
Mountain,
hikes
Elk King.
To use as training hikes to get ready. And doing a few of these are really, really important, especially when knowing that it takes 6 to 12 hours to climb Mount St. Helens. See how long it takes you to climb Dog Mountain, for example, and see how you feel after doing that hike. If you feel like you're really tired after Dog Mountain and it only took you 3 hours, just imagine what it would be like to do it for another 6, for example. So these are things to keep in mind when doing your hiking training hikes, to see how you feel, to practice using your gear. Do you like using poles on the way down? What kind of food do you like when you're on a hike? These sorts of things are all really important and good training opportunities prior to getting up Mount St. Helens, for example. Are there any other questions?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to see this. Sorry if this is a dumb question. There's no dumb questions. I can't scroll to it to see the whole thing.
Oh, Guy, thank you. Timberline atop of Palmer. Yes. Kings Mountain. Yes, these are also
the
all
Palmer
great
hike is a great training hike. I'm thinking about trying to head up Mount St. Helens Friday, but the avalanche risk has been higher because of recent snowfalls, with the next 2 days looking clear. Do you think the avalanche risk may be less by Friday you're talking about? Well, I know it's snowing today. It's forecasted to snow tomorrow.
Yep.
So I don't turn around and go right up to a mountain right after a snowfall. Like immediately after a snowfall. And again, look at Northwest. Yep. Look at the avalanche, look at Northwest Avalanche Center. Read that. They also write a summary that they're really detailed for people like us that can go, okay, do I really want to do this? Because they'll say, you really don't want to do this.
Plus you want to see how much snow is falling, what the conditions look like, what those reports are, or what they're viewing on these avalanche, the NWAC site.
Yeah. They're looking at the wind and all of the factors that are going to play into the way that the wind is the way the snow is slapping, the way the direction the wind is blowing.
Yep, it all depends on what happens between now and then. It's really too soon to tell if it would be a good time to climb or not. I think it's a day-by-day process, and you just really have to look at the weather, the conditions, what's happened over the last period of time. So unfortunately, we can't give you a clear answer as to whether or not it would be smart to go.
And yes, the Mountaineers is a great resource. And someone said,
Yes.
this is not just many, there are several questions about microspikes versus crampons. If you only have microspikes. So I would not climb Mount Saint Helens in the winter without crampons available.
Agreed.
I might have microspikes as a, oh, maybe I'll only need microspikes, but I'll definitely have crampons. So I would not, with a clear conscience, be able to say, just take microspikes and you'll be fine. It's been an interesting year up there right now. It's icy. It's similar. Mount Hood is similar right now, just a big old ice cube. Luckily, we're getting some snow right now, so maybe that snow won't all blow away, but I don't know. So just be prepared for it to be steep and slick. So microspikes are fine, I think, for Mount Defiance or Dog Mountain when you're not using snowshoes. Someone asked about snowshoes too, about worm flows and snowshoes. If it's snowed a lot, then you'll want to have some sort of flotation device, and your friends might be skinning up, or you might be in snowshoes, or there might be a big track already, foot track already laid down, but you can always have your snowshoes. Yep.
Yeah, still have the crampons with you, because
you have the crampons, you have, you might have snowshoes carrying, and I don't know, leave the microspikes at home, maybe.
Yep. One of the questions is asking about rental gear. I know Mountain Shop rents gear.
Yeah,
Next Adventure is also an option, but I've always found that Mountain Shop has really great gear for rent.
And I am gonna give a plug for Mountain Shop, not because they're sponsoring this.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Mountain Shop. No, but because everyone in those departments they're climbers. I know for a fact, because some of them are volunteers for PMR, some of them are mountaineering friends of mine, and I can ask any question and they know the answer. And I think that's really important. When you're getting crampons fit, go to a place where you know that the people that are fitting your crampons to your boots are mountaineers or go climbing. Also, someone else asked about boots. Do you need mountaineering boots or hiking boots? Okay, so I have worn hiking boots in the winter with universal crampons, steel universal crampons on Mount Saint Helens.
But you want to make sure your hiking boots have a stiff sole.
Exactly. So these were not like tennis shoe hiking boots. These are bomber, like what's the brand? Oboes in Montana. They're like mountaineering hiking boots. I mean, they're good. So there's just a tiny step down from my mountaineering boots.
There's a question about snowshoes can be worn on descents. I think that just depends on the conditions. Yeah. If you're going up to knee or waist deep snow, you might want to have your snowshoes on while going down, so that you can stay on top of the snow.
Yeah.
Yep. Mountain Shop definitely rents mountaineering boots too.
For sure.
Definitely.
Hi, Jess. Do you need crampons, ice axe in June on Monitor Ridge?
We're getting into a lot of the gear questions. So thank you, Jess, for coming online so you can help answer some of these.
Yeah, in the summer, you might, yes, when you get up to the snowfields, there are snowfields. They could still be steep in June and July.
On Monitor Ridge.
On Monitor Ridge. Can we talk about hiking in the heat? Not September. May is too hot. May was too hot already. Okay, so what do you want to add about heat, Amy?
Bring extra water. I think we've talked a lot about cold weather, but hot weather, I mean, heat exhaustion is a real thing as well. Making sure you maybe pack extra water. Maybe your friend
start earlier. If you know it's hot, the earlier you start, if you guys get up there and start doing your walkout at 3 o'clock in the morning, you will be happy campers.
If it's
there'll be a beautiful sunrise as a reward along the way.
Make sure you bring your GPS so you know the route you're going in the dark, but definitely leave earlier to get through some of that climb before it really gets hot.
The guide for water is, it's going to swing dramatically. So I don't know if there's an actual guide. I try to have, I'm not going to say, you say what you carry. She carries more.
I do. I probably carry about 3 liters of water with me when I climb, but I also bring extra. I'm the, like Teresa mentioned, the conservative climber in our group. And so I'm bringing a lot of water just in case I need to share it with a friend, in case I want to mix something with electrolytes into it to give it a little extra boost. But
In case we passed one of you guys on the trail and you didn't have any water, and we love you and we want to share with you.
No, but I bring a lot of water just because I know I get thirsty. That's just what I drink a lot while I'm climbing, and so I'm prepared for that. So I think going on these training hikes, you get to know what works for you and what makes sense for you on the mountain. Maybe you don't need a lot of water, but maybe you do, and it's good to know that before you actually get onto Mount St. Helens.
Ooh, we're over our hour. We're at an hour and 34 minutes. So
Jess gonna kick us out.
But we just want to do this before Jess wraps this up and goes, we're done. If someone asks a question and we missed it, would you rewrite it in there? Because I don't want anyone to feel like they got blown off or ignored. Oh yeah, I always have water in my car. I'm like, it's 2 miles from now, I'll get there.
Someone mentioned noon tablets, like I mentioned, electrolytes.
How many people die? I don't know how many people pass away on Mount St. Helens per year.
I don't know the answer either.
Oh yeah, take a stove in the winter or in the summer. It's fun to have. It's good to have. And sometimes it's nice to have. And sometimes, and maybe if you're ever in a situation where you're going to need it, you'll be happy you have it. Anything else? Did we miss anything? Nobody's saying, you guys are just saying thank you.
Are there water sources on the hike up? On Monitor Ridge, I don't believe there's typically a water source. On worm flows, I mean,
well, there's chocolate fall, but you're not going to go down there. No.
Yeah. I would say unless you're planning to melt the snow, there's not great resources for water.
You guys are welcome. We really appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, out of state, for people out of state, I don't know. You'll have to say more. Do you mean like traveling here? What is SMART? I don't know what that is. If your question about being out of state or from a different country is, and you, oh, I see. I got it. Or you have to have a permit, I guess you just make your travel arrangements and hope for good weather.
Or and allow extra time in your travel plan.
Allow extra time. That would be, that's really the main thing. Giving yourself some time to make sure everything goes smooth.
And be willing to not have a summit of the climb. Like that needs to be something to take into consideration because of weather. What is it? Conditions, those sorts of things.
And Jess, this is the last one we'll answer. What is SPART versus SAR? Well, search and rescue. Yes, you're allowed to sleeping in your car. Yes, sleeping in your car is allowed because I've done it. So I hope so. I hope so because I do it. I've never been dragged out before. So yes.
You just need a parking permit.
Yes. I don't know what SPART is. It must be a different search and rescue group. Anyway.
An acronym for something.
Yes.
I don't know either.
Too many acronyms in my head. I can only keep so many. Okay, Jess. Hi.
Hi.
We'll answer this one last question. How busy is it on Mother's Day? I'm going to tell you what. It's all permitted now. So there's only so many permits they give out. How many do they give out? 200 or something?
110, I think is what I said.
Yeah. So that'll be the most people there are on Mother's Day, and put on a little tutu and have a good time.
I guess it just depends on the day Mother's Day falls.
Oh yeah. Mother's Day is a no permit. Yeah. Okay. Thanks you guys.
Amazing.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Huge thanks to both of you for talking to us about climbing Mount St. Helens.
All right.
So many questions. There's a lot of really great questions, a lot of engagement. It was super fun to So listen to it. I'm excited to get out there. I haven't climbed it yet this season. So.
Oh, yay. Call me. I'll go. I'll go.
That would be amazing. For everyone who asked, this presentation was recorded. I think they said that a couple times, but just to make sure everyone gets it. And a link will go out to the Mountain Shop YouTube channel in the wrap-up email that I'll send out tonight. I'll also throw in some of the other resources that we were talking about, some of the websites and guide GPS and all that stuff. So if you are just getting into mountaineering or interested in climbing Mount Hood, we have another presentation on March 4th, also with Portland Mountain Rescue. So you can sign up for that through our website. We also do rent gear. We rent mountaineering packages. So if you don't own stuff and you are interested in doing it, we rent mountaineering packages with crampons, boots, as was said, ice axes. We also have some really nice winter camping tents by Hillebrand, which is like a high-end mountaineering brand. So if you want to, sleep halfway, we have those. We also have avalanche rescue packages. So we have transceivers, shovels, and probes as well. So an easy way to get out there, and you don't have to, it's not a huge price tag, making it accessible for people. Last thing I want to mention is this coming weekend, Mountain Shop is hosting a ski mountaineering race to raise money for Northwest Avalanche Center. So it's at Mount Hood. It's going to be on Saturday, the 26th at Timberline. It's an uphill only race at Timberline. So it'll be skinning uphill. Fastest person wins, and we'll have lots of prizes. It's no pressure. It's kind of all different skill levels and ranges. So it should be fun. And then on Sunday, the 27th, we have another race at Ski Bowl. And there's a recreational course and a long course. Again, it should be fun. It's a mix of all different people and levels and experience, but it's just a fun way to get together, raffles, prizes, awards, and a chance to support our local avalanche center. So if you're interested in signing up, it'll be on our website and on Ultra Sign Up. And yeah, I think that's it. So big thanks again to Teresa and Amy. It was really great to chat with you and have you here. And we will see you all around next time.
Yeah, right on. Bye, guys.